Rise of Hawk, Part 4, Scene 32. The box seemed too big to Asha, but she was aware that she was high on painkillers, so everything looked wrong to her befuddled mind. She lay in an airplane chair, the seat pushed way back so she could rest, but not so far back that any pressure was put on the broken bone. She watched the crate of explosives they'd taken from the RA, which sat in the aisle next to her. It just seemed too big, and she frowned at it some more. Dobert wanted to put something small in the Azera council chambers. The crate was big enough to almost hold a tween-aged child, far too big to put under that big ugly table in the council chambers and not be seen. She mentally shrugged. Perhaps there was more in the crate than they needed. She started feeling a twitch of pain that developed over 2 or 3 seconds into a pounding spike of agony. She let out a moan and closed her eyes. Nalana's hands reached over to her from the window seat and dropped down on either side of the agony. Warm, pulsing static flowed into the pain and eased it out of her. "Oh, thanks, Nala." She sensed a flare of affection from the young woman. "Any time, hon." Asha opened her eyes again and let her mind flutter over the crate some more. They'd managed to succeed in Dobert's plan without anyone getting killed. It'd be a while before their injured, including herself, went on any combat missions, but they were all alive. Thank the old gods. Beyond the crate, lying in the second aisle of seats, was Lalane. Her face was turned away so that all Asha could see was the back of her pitch-black hair and a lone shoulder peeking over the line of grey blankets. Lalane had done very well, considering she'd grown up with the RA. Asha had honestly expected the giant of a woman to not come with them to assault the house, but she hadn't even needed to ask. Asha smiled numbly at Lalane. She was quite attractive, and Asha would have asked her out if Talon hadn't been interested in her first. A moan came from across the aisle, and it took a few seconds for Asha's foggy brain to realise that Lalane was waking up. Next to her, Nalana climbed over the back of her seat and around Asha to get to Lalane. "You're all right, Lalane. Just rest. You've been shot." "No kidding. I've been shot?" Her voice was broken and tired, but still forceful, and Asha smiled at the woman's tenacity. "That Akina, Joe. Sister's my ass." Lalane's anger degraded into a grumbling mumble in one of the Ronin dialects, and by her tone she had to be swearing something wicked. Asha chuckled, but flinched as her laughing created a shot of pain through her shoulder and lung. "Oh, ow." The grumbling stopped, and Asha sensed Lalane's attention shift onto her. "Did we win? Did we get the boys and the explosives?" Asha swallowed. Bana was still unconscious, and poor Zach was very upset. But they were alive. "Yeah, we got them. Explosives are right next to you." Lalane's face turned towards her, and dark eyes dropped to the crate between them. "Sothan Nuth, it's the wrong kind." In her surprise, Asha tried to sit up, but grunted. "What do you mean it's the wrong kind?" Lalane's voice lowered into a growl. "I mean it's the wrong Sothan type of Sothan explosives. This is stuff used for mining. That amount will blow up the whole Sothan building, not a Sothan room." "Well, can't we—" "No, it's the wrong kind. Look, you can't even refine it much. It's not reactive enough in small doses. You'd have better luck killing only them by throwing a Sothan grenade at this council of yours." Lalana, who was hovering over Lalane, looked across the plain at Asha. "What does that mean?" "Kiddo," answered Lalane for her, "it means Mena was tricking us all along, and if Hawk still wants to use the stuff in the tower, he ain't just going to kill his target." Asha swallowed back her sudden grief. "It means that a lot of innocent people are going to die, Nala." Lalane looked at Asha across the cabin. "So Hawk won't back down?" Remembering the vision of a dead planet, Asha shook her head. "No, he can't back down." Scene 33. 2 days later. Kamo. David watched the Ronin man below him in the alley. Nighttime shadows and the biting rain gave him the stealth to be unseen where he stood crouched on a fire escape. One major advantage that Aranan physiology had over Ronan was night vision. Ronan people had almost none. Even if David had been standing in the alley level with Mena instead of above him, he wouldn't have been seen by the old man. Mena stood under an awning in a curving alley, trying to keep from getting wet in the midnight downpour. The tension in his shoulders and his tightly balled fists told David that the man was not only cold but fearful. One edge of David's mouth twitched upwards. A frightened target gave him a significant advantage over the taller, stronger man. David hadn't been able to find the girl. It didn't seem to be on his path to find her, but he had found every other Rona barn left in the city. There'd only been 5 RA left after Firefight in the manor. Each of them had been frightened and inexperienced, making it an easier hunt for him. However, he wasn't going to attack this man without first watching him for a while. He needed to know what kind of man Mena was before he could judge the best angle of approach. Below him, a Ronin child, wearing a faded white t-shirt and jeans, ran towards Mena through the shadows. The child held an old-style metal torch, and the artificial light flickered back and forth through the pounding rain as they ran. "Gred, what have you found out?" barked Mena from under the awning. The child stood in the rain, not even attempting to get under cover. "Sir, they's all dead." "What?" Zay shrugged. "Dead, sir. Shot in the head. Cops say it weren't the guard neither. Gun's too small." "Fine. Keep listening for more information." The man's voice was condescending, as if he was talking to a trained serving animal and not a sentient being. "Here." Mena took a small package from out of his dark wool trench coat. The kid snatched the package from his hand and skittered away, back towards the street, taking the dancing shaft of torchlight with them. Tobit climbed over the edge of the fire escape rail without making a sound and dropped to the concrete below. There was no artificial light in the alley, making almost everything a night vision grey. But where occasional shafts of light touched the edges of brick, there were pockets of red that faded into the grey like a special filter on a camera. David's footsteps were silent against the pattering rain. He closed the gap between himself and the tall, broad Ronin man. Mena, like the rest of his people, had to die. Not because he betrayed the rebels, though that fact made the situation less cold-blooded. David lowered himself into his Enigma persona. The more arrogant and hostile, the better. He made sure he was still in the pitch blackness when he spoke, but close enough to Mena to seem as if he had appeared out of nowhere. "Mena Milan, I presume?" He kept his voice icy and hostile, but not quite growling yet. The man managed to suppress his surprise well, but his body still stiffened as he looked around him for the source of the voice. A frown crossed his square features. "No, you didn't imagine me." David flicked on a pen-sized ambient lamp he held. The man stepped back into the wall, only then realizing just how close David had managed to get to him without being sensed. The fear on Mena's face morphed into an angry defiance. He was being played, and he knew it. Mena went for a weapon in his coat. David dropped the tiny lamp and grabbed Mena's wrist. With his thumb and fingertips triggering pressure points, David used the pain to redirect Mena's arm long enough to reach in and take his gun. David stepped back out of Mena's visual range and started stripping down his hand cannon. Once he'd completely taken the gun down to its collapsible parts, he threw the pieces back at Mena. The old man couldn't see David, and only seemed to get angrier. "Hiding in the dark? What are you, a coward?" "I am Hawk." "Mammon!" Mena bellowed as he lunged blindly towards his voice. David stepped to one side and kicked the man's knees out from under him. "Why did you try to kill my people? I thought we had a deal." "You betrayed us first," Mena growled from the grubby pavement. "Where is my brother?" "He failed," David said through gritted teeth. "We cannot be held accountable for his mistakes." Mena leaped to his feet, with his broad arms wide in an attempt to get a hold of him, but David simply moved out of range again. Mena dropped his arms and glared at the dark. "You know, you won't find the girl." "I'm not interested in the girl," David lied. Black eyes tracked the location of his voice, and the old man frowned. "You want to trade again? Is that what you want?" "You have betrayed us." Dobard let a deep undertone of hostility into his voice. You tried to kill some of my best people. You never had any intention of fulfilling your part of the trade, and soon, when things get hard enough for you, you will betray us to the guard to gain a short-term advantage. It will not only get you killed, but many of my people. The logical conclusion is that I cannot let you live, Manor Milan. The man's eyes widened. He turned, but didn't have time to escape because Dobard punched out, triggering a number of pain centers in the man's back, and then he cracked some ribs with a quick jab punch. The old man cried out in agony and dropped to his hands and knees on the dirty pavement. You can't do this, he gasped. Dobard took his weapon out from his jacket and put the barrel to the man's forehead. I already have.